Okay, let's try this one more time, folks. Like I said, it is about a little after 3 in the morning. It's about 3:02, I believe. Well, actually 3:01, going on 3:02. Unlike Doug Walker, I'm not up, and I'm not up because of the fact that it's constantly daytime, almost 24/7, like it is in Finland. Um, but I thought I'd come on here, and after watching Doug and Andre's video, which you can find at Black Nerd Comedy's YouTube page, Doug Walker and Andre, Doug Walker, Nostalgia Critic, and Andre of the Black Nerd Comedy. Basically, they did a crossover for Nostalgia Critics reviews on the Smurfs movie, and of course, in return, Doug crossed over into a video, maybe two videos, on the Black Nerd Comedy channel, where they did basically the same thing that he did with Jeremy Johns, and that's ruin your childhood. Basically, talk about what childhood favorites growing up, or at least favorites growing up as a child and all that, either animated or or even live action, that you personally would like to see rebooted, or probably be considered for a rebootion. I know I just made that word up, but a rebootion, if you will. Basically those that probably have not been touched. And in both the Jeremy Johns crossover, as well as with Doug recently, they brought up some good ones. Basically gave their explanations of how they would go with it. And, I have to agree with what Doug said on some of them. Andre, of course, put his own little tidbits there, if you will, like, oh, this is what I would do, especially nowadays. And Andre's not too far off on maybe how that would happen, especially if a certain company owned the rights to the character, if you will. So, anyway, I thought I'd come here and do my own reply to that. My own video of not ruined childhood, but kind of look at what childhood favorites from my past, from the 80s, 90s, and even the 70s, if you will, maybe if you grew up in that time, that I'd like to see get rebooted, but but no offense to Andre, he has his opinions, he can make a joke out of it if he wants to, so can Doug. But basically, what I feel would be more respectable reboots, either they just be for a theatrical release, for a new series, whatever. And excuse me, I had to get a drink there. And I thought I'd just share them with you, and hopefully this is not going to be a two-part video or anything. Just throw some ideas out there, some shows out there that I think could really benefit from a proper reboot, if done right, for either theatrical or television. And looking around what I have behind me here, or to the side of me here, I kind of get some good ideas. Like, for example, one idea I would like to see, if I can find it, here it is. One idea I'd like to see rebooted, especially if you look back on it now, it does have that nostalgia to it, because when this series came out by Hanna-Barbera and Ruby Spears, it was basically back in the early 80s. It was back around, I think, what year was this? About 81, I think, or something like that. 82, 80 something. I can't really remember the year. Can't really remember the year here, but I think it might have been about basically the early to mid 80s for this. And the reason when you look at it now and you watch it now, it has that bit of nostalgia to it, because of the fact that the future they were talking about was the early 90s. That's right, the early 90s, specifically 1994, which might give you an idea of what show I'm talking about. And I believe if Warner Brothers was to take this show and reboot it, whether it be for theatrical reasons or even a new animated series, heck, even maybe a live action series, who knows? I think it would be probably one of the better franchises they can reboot properly. And of course, I'm talking about Thundar the Barbarian. And when I look at Thundar here, I say to myself, this is something that they could really work with. They could really work and, make it a little bit more adaptable to today's standards. Like, you could still keep the whole future reference, but instead of making it a more realistic future, like 1994, because like I said, when this came out around the early to mid 80s, 1994, yeah, that was like a little over a decade away, but still it was reachable, it was obtainable, it was more realistic, if you will, more realistic, like I said, more attainable. So I think if Warner Brothers was to reboot this, either for theatrical reasons, live action television reasons, or animated television reasons, they need to go with a more really fictional outlook for the future. Instead of being like, okay, let's place it 15 years in the future or 13, 12 years in the future like the original, you need to make it more like go that 100 route, or go that 125 or 200-year route. Go in that direction. And I guarantee if you were to go at least, in fact, I'll even say if you want to be a little bit more kind of in between reality and fiction, go the 50-year route. Because no one knows what's going to happen in 50 years. No one knows what's going to happen in 2065, from right now. So I would suggest to give it that more sci-fi, but kind of keep it a bit in reality, if you will. Go the 50-year route in the future, 50 years in the future, and do 2065, or if you want to go that 100-year route and go, 2115 or 2215. Basically, keep it true to what it was, in a sense, keep the essence of the show, true to itself, keep the characters true to themselves. Maybe change up a bit of the personalities a little bit, but again, keep the essence of the original in either that theatrical adaptation or reboot, or the live action or animated series reboot. Keep the characters true to themselves, but in my opinion, if you were to reboot this, if Thundar got rebooted by Warner Brothers, you got to go with that 50 years in the future, 50 to 100, maybe 200 years in the future route, instead of just a little over a decade route, because looking back on it, yeah, it's great nostalgia, and it makes you think, and it makes your mind go back to that time period and remember that, oh man, I can recall that when 94 was so far off, and now all of a sudden 1994 is like 21 years ago, so, but yeah, I think Thundar the Barbarian, to me, would definitely be a good show a franchise to reboot, either for theatrical reasons, live action, or animated reasons. And again, instead of going that 13, 12 route in the 12 years, basically that little over a decade route, a little over a decade in the future route, I would go with more of a 50 to 100, maybe 200-year route instead. Kind of give it a little bit of reality if you want to do the 50 route, but more of that sci-fi if you want to go beyond that, and almost, like I say, 2 centuries into the future, if you get my drift. So Thundar, to me, would be a good choice to start out with. Another one I think that would be great would be Inhumanoids. Nowadays, I know people can say Inhumanoids would never pass. That the show itself back when it came out was very controversial, if not dark and violent. And I understand that. I do understand that. But it did have potential. Even if it ran for 13 episodes, it had potential. It had potential. And to me, if you were to rework Inhumanoids back into a series, especially nowadays, you got things like MTV and Sci-Fi and, you know, all these networks that are doing these like monster-like shows that are, and even Netflix, if you will, that, and Hula, I should say, that are distributing these, that are producing and distributing and creating these sci-fi monster horror-like shows. Inhumanoids, either from a live-action standpoint or a computer-generated standpoint, CGI, or even a traditional 2D standpoint, would be a perfect choice, especially when you get to the time of the year like now. You know, you want to put something out there that people will watch, people will get them into the mood for, let's say, Halloween. Inhumanoids would be perfect. And you could definitely go the route that you've done with the original. You know, you could retell that story if you want to. You could retell that story. And, you know, you could do, you know, several episodes, maybe more than just two, where the main female lead on the good guy's side ends up becoming a zombie monster thanks to Decompose. I mean, let's not forget, for about an episode and a half in the miniseries, Decompose changed her into a Skeletor, a giant skeleton zombie. That when she was fighting her friends, she basically took, obviously, what was her love interest, opened up a freaking ribcage, put him inside. So I think that would be something you could really do. That to me is a show that nowadays could really work. And yeah, for a movie, there's no doubt you could probably do a freaking sci-fi horror film out of that. Sort of in the veins of, let's say, Starship Troopers maybe, or Aliens or whatever. That would be something that would really borderline between PG-13 and R, just because of how it was portrayed. I mean, it would really work to me. And like I said, even as a live action or animated series, it would work too, especially if you got people like Netflix, Hulu, MTV, you know, and so on, you know, CW, they would be willing to take a chance on distributing and showing that show. So, to me, I think Inhumanoids, if done properly, could be a definite franchise to consider for a reboot, for a revamp, if you will, for a new generation, in my opinion. Another one, I think, is Turbo Teen. I am surprised no one ever talked about Turbo Teen. I don't know if Jeremy Johns talked about Turbo Teen in his video with Andre. But Turbo Teen, to me, would definitely be worth doing. And I think, in nowadays, hold on. Let me get another drink here. My brain's fried. Much better. But like I said, Turbo Teen, I think if you were to reboot it for this generation, I think nowadays you have to go the female route. And I'm not saying that because I'm a fan of females, characters, fiction, or whatever, fanfic stories, web comics, whatever, turning into inanimate objects of things and stuff like that. No. I just think nowadays, and if you look throughout media, a lot of the male heroes of the past in different franchises, when they get rebooted, that hero gets replaced with a female version of themselves. I'm not lying. G.I. Joe Resolute, and I think even Renegades as well, took the character of Dial Tone, who originally was a male character, hear me out, a male character, and turned them female for Resolute and I think Renegades. Okay? Transformers did the same thing, I think, with some of their spin-offs. I think it was in Cybertron, Transformers Cybertron, or Unicron, the Unicron Wars, or Energon, or something like that. They took one of the characters. In fact, I have that character somewhere around here. Took one of the male characters, and for one of the newer shows, turned them female. So, it's nothing really new, and I think, again, it's nothing really new, and I believe, in my opinion, that if Turbo Teen was to be revamped and rebooted, you got to go the female route, especially in today's world. You get the whole women's, revolution in sports, and not just in sports, but in politics and military and in jobs and all that. You got this women's movement, this women's revolution. I think, in a sense, if you were to take a show like Turbo Teen and revamp it, reboot it for this year, or for this generation, either as a theatrical film, which would have to be a comedy, you have to go the comedy route with it, a comedy action film with it. You got to go that route with it, an action comedy, or a live action or animated series. Which, live action wise, again, you got to go the action comedy route, and animated series, of course, it's animated. It's got to be funny. It's got to be it's got to have a bit of comedy in there. I mean, Turbo Teen originally had comedy as well as action. Excuse me. So, again, I think you got to go the female route with this one. You really do. And I think if you go that route and you go either for a theatrical reboot and you go the action comedy with it, or a live action television series reboot and do the same thing, action comedy, or even animated, what's going to have action and comedy anyway. You got to make the lead female character, who's going to be the Turbo Teen, if you will, the character that turns into a car when she's hot, and when they're hot, and then turns back to human when they're cold, or cool down, or whatever. I think you got to make her mischievy. You got to make her okay, she knows that she has this power now to help her friends out, do the right thing, bring justice wherever it needs to be, stop villains or criminals from doing whatever they're doing, but also have a bit of fun with this new power she has. For example, have her friends question, whether or not there's a possibility that's, if she never gets restored back to flesh and blood full time, that when she's a car, and if she's a car long enough, if she can end up losing herself to the car and just be the car. In other words, if they were to speak to her and, as, so-and-so, as, hey, so-and-so, how do you feel? You could put in that fear that the response they would get would be, I don't know who you're talking about. I am just a car. I'm just the car and all that. I mean, it would be a talking car. It would be her voice, but it would be a fear that she would slowly start to lose herself into being a car. And you can have her with that mischievy personality, kind of have fun with that by teasing her friends once in a while, by kind of playing a little bit of a prank that, of course, she would apologize for later on when she'd be back to normal after cooling down. So I definitely think a Turbo Teen reboot would be good. And I think, in a sense, again, you got to have that mischievy side added to her, because I don't think we had that much in the original. So you got to have a mischievy side, a fun side, a side that likes to kind of prank friends if she gets in the mischievy mood, but always has a good heart, does the right thing, and all that. So I would definitely go for that. I would definitely be in favor of a Turbo Teen reboot. I really would, with a female as the lead character. And I also think, if I remember right,